This is Business Central on News Central. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Our headline story: Environmentalists and Nigerian farmers win against Shell in Dutch court. After 13 years of court dates and adjournment, on Friday, January 29, 2021, a verdict was given against the Nigerian arm of Royal Dutch Shell for oil spills in the Niger Delta coastal area of Africa's largest economy. What are the implications of this verdict? That is our focus today. We'll also touch base with a few stories we're keeping our eyes on with NC4 to watch before we finish the show. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Now, Royal Dutch Shell has been ordered to pay damages to Nigerian farmers after an appeals court in The Hague in the Netherlands found the energy major's Nigerian subsidiary liable for oil spills in the Niger Delta more than a decade ago. This decision is the latest in a long-running civil case. It is an advance in the Netherlands' ability to hold multinationals to account for the actions of their overseas subsidiaries. Procedural aspects of the decision can still be appealed in the Dutch Supreme Court. Now, the judge held that Shell Nigeria was liable for 2 pipeline spills that took place in the villages of Oruma and Goy between 2004 and 2005. The court has yet to make a decision on a third in 2007 from a wellhead and has requested more evidence on the extent of the leak and cleanup. Shell, which argued that the spills were caused by sabotage and that it should not be held accountable for the dealings of a foreign subsidiary, said on Friday it was disappointed that this court has made a different finding. The court said Shell had been unable to further prove the cause of the spills. The judge also ordered Shell to fit a leak detection system on one of its pipelines. Establishing a duty of care on the parent company in this aspect of the case could break new legal ground and have implications on where future cases are brought, with more companies facing action where they are headquartered rather than where alleged pollution has taken place. Now, joining me on Business Edge is financial analyst and CEO Asher Dynamic Solutions, and he is, of course, Muktar Mohammad. I also have renowned environmentalist and architect Nnimmo Bassey joining me for this conversation. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome. Thank you again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being on your show this morning.
Thank you. Let me start with you, Muktar. It took 13 years to get the verdict in this case. But there are also those who say that verdicts like this may actually chase away potential investors because they're expected to be a bit more accountable in certain areas and could lead to damages being paid out. What are your thoughts on this, that this could lead to investors being scared off?
I don't think so. It depends on if the investors want to cut corner. And investors don't want to be responsible. This should even lead to attract more investors. That in any business, when you talk about, you talked about when you have property intellectual protection, then you have also the rule of law. This actually shows the companies and that they're doing business that they can get judgment, they can get sure of the rule of law, no matter how long it takes. It has taken too long even. So if you talked about that, that could be one of the drawback of the decision. But to say that investors will not come, I think it's just trying to whip out sympathy so that so many other judgment will not come through. I think it's a very good judgment that has come through. It has stayed this long, and I think it's going to be a landmark judgment that will change the way oil companies, especially in the Niger Delta, take issues of pollution. And that also will even go to our own national oil company also in NNPC when it comes to pipeline vandalization or pipeline busting of pipeline. They keep on turning that to the vandals and refuse to take responsibility. I think it's high time oil companies and oil majors begin to take responsibility. And for Shell arguing that is their subsidiary another, and we ask that question. At the end of the year, the subsidiary render a lot of account of whatever they have done into their parent company as in sense of profit after tax. Yeah. So they should be responsible also because they're also part of the beneficiary to this to this too.
Okay, Nnimmo, let me bring you into this conversation. This is a space you've worked in for a number of years. The amount that Shell is meant to pay in damages is going to be decided at a later date, but I want to see if we can come to some kind of understanding. Now, we know that the restoration of the farmlands that led to this lawsuit is still a major topic of conversation. We have the Ogoni cleanup here in Nigeria that many have said has not really cleaned anything up. But Ogoni land is just a piece of the larger Niger Delta that has been affected by environmental issues since exploration of oil, of crude, started in Nigeria. Do we have an idea of how much should be or how much is being asked, how much is being mentioned in terms of the damages that are being sought in this case?
No, that is the next issue that has to be discussed and negotiated. Usually when cases of this nature are being pursued in court, the plaintiffs seek first to hold the offender, the defendant, accountable. Once that is settled, then you can move to the next stage. And you find that in many of the cases that has gone on in Nigerian court, for example, the Bonga oil spill that Shell deliberately actually pumped oil into the ocean instead of into a vessel, and they claim they pumped 40,000 liters of petroleum crude oil into the Atlantic Ocean and contaminated a wide stretch of the Niger Delta. Now, in that case, NOSRA, the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, fined Shell 1.6 or $1.8 billion. Now, Shell refused to pay and went to court, and the court raised the figure to over $3 billion. But up to now, Shell has not paid. So we find this is the problem we find when you litigate against these big oil corporations. In the Nigerian court, they always find a way to just ignore the judgment, and nobody does anything about it. But now, when it gets to international scenario in their home country, when Shell was sued in the U.S. for the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa and the other 8 Ogoni leaders, they settled out of court, paid $15 million out of court, and they said that was the humanitarian reasons they were paying, not that they were guilty. When Bodo Community sued Shell in the UK, they paid about 55 million pounds sterling again to settle out of court. But in this case, the first stage has been for the court to hold this big oil company responsible for the oil spills in Goi community, at the Ruma community. In 2013, they had held Shell guilty of the pollution at the court at Audo, which is the one that is still, the judge says still wants more information. So this is the very first basis for discussion about how much should be paid as compensation. The first thing is the moral foundation that some entity is guilty.
Okay, let me just refresh our viewers' memories, particularly in recent times. Now, British Petroleum had the Deepwater Horizon spill, which was in 2010, and it ended out with a massive, probably historic level payout to a number of people. So BP has paid $20 billion to settle suits brought by the state and the federal government in the United States. They've paid a $4 billion fine that was levied on the company by the U.S. Department of Justice, and they've also paid $32 billion towards the cleanup and more. With that and a number of out-of-court settlements also, BP by this time now has paid about $70 billion. And I need to add, so far. That's not all that eventually is going to come out. So, Nnimmo, let me come back to you. While we don't have a figure in this case, when we look at the, I guess I would say the antecedents of maybe the BP spill that happened in the Gulf of New Mexico in the United States, we see that a fine is not just damages is not just one thing. It's the fine from the state or the country that is in charge. It's the fine from regulatory agency. It's a lawsuit from the states. It's a lawsuit from the federal government. What do we think, in your estimation? You've been privy to this case for a number of years. What is the damages really going to be made up of, even if we don't have a figure to that?
Well, maybe we should just reflect on what happened again in the Nigerian situation. The case in Oruma was a pipe that is buried 6 feet deep, and the leakage was at the underneath side of the pipe, not at the top of the pipe. And Shell said this was sabotage. So the judge was right to just throw out that kind of argument because there was clearly, this was corrosion or pipeline failure.
A structural issue.
At Goi community, Goni, there is no pipeline, there's no oil well, and the oil spill came from somewhere else and caught fire and burnt that community. The citizens there have been living as refugees since 2004, 2005, as refugees in other parts of the Niger Delta, the part of Nigeria. Now, the case in the Coda Daudo, this was a capped oil well that was in the middle of the community, and the oil spill went on for about 3 months. It was on national television. Senators, everybody went there to see an oil spill. It was now a spectacle. Now, this extent of damage is difficult to compute in terms of funds. I don't see Shell being asked to pay anything less than maybe $100 billion US.
Wow.
Because you are talking about lives that have been lost. Yeah. 2 of the plaintiffs are dead right now. Communities, Goi community, I go to Goni land frequently, and I usually sit on the bank of the creek at Goi community just to remind myself that this is wickedness, because that pollution is still there, because the tidal nature of the water. It goes out, it comes back, and you find children swimming in that contaminated water. And then how do you pay for that? How do you compute how much that is worth? So whatever they ask to pay will just be a token. Even if it's $1 billion, 100 billion, whatever it is, will be a token. You can't place a price on life.
Yeah.
And what the corporation has done has been take away the life of the people, take away their dreams, take away their future, and it's sent a whole community to be refugees. It just doesn't make sense at all. And they keep denying it. It's very annoying. Absolutely annoying.
So, Muktar, let me come back to you. We're seeing and have been seeing for some time that Shell has been selling off some of the assets that it owns in Nigeria, even the oil mining license, OML 17. This seems to be some type of strategy. What do you think is behind the sell-off, even a sell-off that was predating the verdict in this case?
Well, I think the sell-off is strategic. Shell is trying to reduce their business interest in Nigeria. They brought out a lot of issues like insecurity, pipeline vandalization, piracy in the high sea, a lot of things that Shell is bringing up, cost of doing businesses also. So I don't think anything has to do with the judgment. And even if it has to do with the judgment, it will also not say that it will not happen to them, because at the time they were doing business, that's when these issues happen, even if Shell decide to leave Nigeria completely. And that is why I'm excited that they are not charging Shell here in Nigeria. They are not charging them in a Nigerian court. They are charging them from their headquarters there, so they will have to pay if they have to pay. And so it doesn't change anything. The verdict has gone out, and so it will stand. It's just like the government coming into power and saying that the previous government was the one that was owing you debt, will not have the capability to pay. You would definitely have to pay, because government is a continuous process. So the same thing with Shell. I think they are companies. They are one of the largest oil companies in the world. So they are big fish that have no place to hide. And I'm excited if the Shell is going to be paying $100 billion to Nigerian. To Nigerians and to Nigerian companies for damages they have done to the nation. I mean, that would be awesome if it eventually happens. I am not those that are excited about court judgment. I'm always excited about when it comes to see this judgment comes to play. Not just because we realize that a lot of judgment have gone against these oil companies in Nigeria here, and they will not want to pay off, like some of the instance that he has. My colleague talked about that up to this moment, Shell have refused to do the needful. And that shows the type of system that we operate here. We should come out and begin to operate a very good system that could benefit the ordinary Nigeria, that the ordinary Nigerian feel comfortable that I am in my country, there is rule of law.
All right, so we're going to take a time out here. You've mentioned system as well as the examples that Nnimmo has given. When we come back, we'll talk about the petroleum industry bill in Nigeria and how it could possibly forestall or address issues such as this. This is Business Edge right here on News Central. Do stay with us. You're still watching Business Edge, and my guests are still with me, environmentalist Nnimmo Bassey and financial analyst Muktar Mohammad, as we look at the verdict against Nigeria's Shell, which of course happened in a court in The Hague. So Nnimmo, let me come to you. As you mentioned, this case was brought by a number of farmers. Right now, we know 2 of them have passed on. It's been 13 years. But what do you really think will come of this in terms of what's going to happen next? What's the precedent that's being set? What are the actions that we expect to come as industry players adjust to this verdict and adjust to the fact that you can do pollution in Nigeria, you can do pollution in Somalia, you can do pollution in Kenya, but we can come knocking at your doorstep to get compensation?
Actually, the judgment is a very big step towards getting corporations to understand that the days of impunity are coming to a close. In many countries, in some countries already, we have laws like the rights of Mother Earth in their constitution. For example, in Bolivia, also in Ecuador, and at the global level, there's also a big push to have a new law, a new international law called ecocide, which will be in the same range as war crimes, as war crimes against humanity, and also in the same range as genocide. Now, when that comes to be, the oil companies or mining companies or whatever entities would not be able to get away with what they've been getting away with, because then there will be an international law and they could be sued virtually anywhere in the world. Yeah. In this particular judgment also sends a signal to communities. It's a precedent, a very precedent-setting judgment that now those who have thought they couldn't go to the home countries of these big companies to sue them in front of their shareholders, they can now be emboldened to know that they can go there and they'll get somebody listening to them. And particularly, I'm hoping that in this case, there will be no settlement out of court, that the settlement will be completed inside the courtroom, so that the appropriate fines will be imposed on the corporation and not the tokens they usually not negotiate outside of the courtroom. Okay. You asked the question the other with my colleague about oil companies selling off their fields to Nigerians. And it's very sad, because really these Nigerian companies, I don't know what they think they're doing. You cannot, whether you buy a field or a sub-field or whatever, I don't really see a way where the Nigerians will buy the liabilities. There are several liabilities in all the fields because they've been so recklessly run. There's an ongoing spill at Nnimmo, near Koloma in Bayelsa State. Now, Chevron says they're not responsible. Now, Corn Oil is buying off that same oil field. There's an oil spill ongoing. There's another oil fire in Ororo number 1 well in Ondo State. The fire has been on for 8 solid months. Wow. And now nobody knows who owns that. It's like DPR, the Directorate of Petroleum Resources, kind of took over the well from the corporations who were running it, and now, but the fire is going on and nobody's talking about it. What kind of society are we running? And how are we going to bring this to a halt? So it's this kind of case that shows that, look, somebody has to be held accountable. Yeah. And the problem with us, again, is that Nigerian state is running in partnership, all these oil fields in partnership with the oil companies. So, they are not able to hold these corporations accountable because they are partners. They're partners. They're partners.
Joint ventures are happening. So let me pick up from what you just said in terms of how to address this. So the current iteration of the Petroleum Industry Bill is with the Nigerian National Assembly, and it captures environmental restoration as part of the things that it looks to address. But it seems to also give a lot of power to the oil majors. And I think you've partly answered this question. The same oil majors who are responsible for some of these environmental issues in the first place. So Muktar, let me come to you on this. We saw, unfortunately, last week, representatives of host communities actually coming to blows in the National Assembly over 2.5% versus 10%, over how much the communities would take home and how it needs to be put into the bill. We also saw conversations on the trust funds, which apparently more power resides in the hands of the oil majors, the IOCs, than in the communities that actually need access to these funds. So when you look at all of this and you hear these conversations and you see that we take these cases to courts in Nigeria, judgment is passed, nothing is done, and we have to go outside of the country to get justice, what does it make you think in regards to the petroleum industry bill? At the end of the day, will this bill bring sanity and transparency as well as consequences to the Nigerian oil and gas sector?
I wish I'm optimistic. I don't think so, because any legislation that's going to come is boiled down on rule of law. And so when you are in a country whereby the rule of law is not taken serious, then you don't expect any document to have any impact on both the people or the companies. He just mentioned Nigerian companies acquiring some of these oil fields that are involved in high pollution, and also the fact that some of these oil majors could get away with it because the government also is a partner, have a stake in some of those oil blocks. So when you look at the petroleum industry bill, you look at a bill that is good in papers, and then the government is trying to impose that bill on the people. It's not like when they say they call for public presentation, it's not like they really need the public, because that's why they will come. You see two communities that are supposed to agree for a particular bill that is supposed to help them as a community fighting over, we should just allow the 2% to be, or then when the other communities say no, that is too small for, we should get 10%. It's something that they should be excited about and come together. But the Nigerian government have been able to divide the people of the Niger Delta because of divide and rule method. They try to come up with many youth association, youth vanguard, youth this, youth that. It's just the way we have been made to believe in this country, and it's so sad that Nigerians are the one doing it to Nigeria. So for me, I'm not excited about the petroleum industry bill. It's going to help the high and mighty, the oil companies and everything. So it won't be an issue. It will not help the community already. The community are already divided. Yeah. So we need to see how that will plan. Like I always say, Nigeria is not devoid of good documents. They have never been devoid of good documents. What we have been devoid of has been implementation of those variable documents that we have.
Okay. And I think this is a good note to end on. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll follow this case. There is, of course, a third oil spill that is also in contention right now. We're also waiting for later when the exact amount will also be put out as to how much damages Shell needs to pay. And we'll see if more people, more communities will actually take some of these international oil companies to courts for environmental damages in their area. Nnimmo Bassey, renowned Nigerian environmentalist, thank you so much for your time today. Muktar Mohammad, financial analyst and CEO of Astrodynamic Solutions, thank you as well for your time today. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
A pleasure.
All right, we'll wrap things up the usual way, which of course is NC4 to watch. We start in Southern Africa, where the Kingdom of Eswatini is changing its tax system and reducing its debt arrears as it seeks to shore up its finances amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Southern African nation intends to introduce new levies to increase its tax take and bring more individuals and entities into the net. And this is coming from the finance minister, who was speaking in an interview. Elon Musk has pushed the price of Bitcoin, and this happened when he placed Bitcoin on his Twitter profile from about Friday to early Monday. The cryptocurrency surged as much as 16% on Friday, touching $38,627 after Musk changed his Twitter profile to #Bitcoin. While the reference is still visible Monday, Bitcoin was back at around $33,600 as of 2 p.m. Tokyo time or 6 a.m. West African time. A British firm, Savannah Energy, has reduced its planned 4-year capital expenditures in Nigeria by 15%. The firm disclosed this in a statement announcing that it had amended its capital expenditure program in the country as originally set out in the Nigeria Competent Persons Report published in December 2019. And finally, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development announced a 20 million euro risk-sharing facility to enable Attijari Bank Tunisia, a subsidiary of the Moroccan Attijari Wafa Bank, to support Tunisian small businesses to gain better access to financing. Now, since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, existing challenges to access funding and liquidity have become even more acute and further constrain the growth of many private businesses. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Head to our website, www.newscentral.africa, and also download our mobile app on Play Store and Apple iStore. Until next time, I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Do have a good day.